sound to say it's recording. Rich, good afternoon. It's nice to see you.
Hello, Brad. Nice to see you too. How are you?
I am okay, but only for the third time. We're quite new to each other, in fact.
Yeah, very much so. New friends. I mean, we were connected by a mutual friend who just had a feeling that maybe there was something in that they saw in both of us that we might find fun, and I've certainly found it fun over the last 2 or 3 times we've spoken.
And I think it says as much about us as it does them, that they saw that connection and were right.
I would agree. I mean, one of the things that I've noticed that we work in a similar pond. We're both curious and interested in helping people find problems, particularly when things are going through some change and we run our own businesses. I mean, you've got a really successful business you run yourself, and that's the element that on sort of work, the boring stuff, the work that connects us. But there was something deeper for me, actually.
And when you feel that connection with someone, especially right now, the world is so different now. We've met. Because we've met right in the middle of lockdown. I think you said to me just before, we're on day 58.
Not that I'm counting. Day 58. Yeah, that's right.
So as a business guy, I read yesterday that the United Nations are telling us we've got to be careful with our language. I've got to call you a business person.
Yeah.
But as a guy who runs their own business, how have you found the last 2 months? Because in our world, it's about connection. It's about being in a room with people. What have you observed in the land of development?
Yeah, well, gosh, I think so many things bubble to the surface here in this unscripted conversation that we're having. I mean, I can't help thinking selfishly about myself, actually, and how I've it's been a real roller coaster, because I'm a glass half full, optimistic, positive sort of person, and whatever comes at my way, I've learned to actually try and find what's the insight, what's the learning, what's the magic. And actually, during this last period, there've been particularly a couple of weeks which I really struggled to do that.
Yeah.
And I really found myself spiraling down. I wouldn't, just to say the word depression, sort of touches going into deeper thoughts. And that really had a ripple on effect. And I think the lesson that it had for me is that I was sort of slightly going not in such a happy place. This was a month or so ago. And I didn't notice my wife was too. And we've got three children, 24, 22 and 21 at home. And that impact of us going down and me getting into my own sort of darker spaces really reminded me, now I'm in a better place, actually the impact that I was having, my behavior, the modeling of stuff and the mirroring back had a multiplying effect and it had a shadow, and it was a bad shadow which had that sort of behavior trait I could start to see in them. So it makes me think, in the land of learning and people development that we occupy, is the impact that humans can have with the way in which they behave can be immeasurably much bigger than we could ever possibly imagine. And it can be a positive shadow, it can be a real force for good, or it can be somewhat else. And that was one real big lesson as a 53-year-old guy who's been doing this work for 30 years. It's sort of, I got myself in that state, and then had the impact on the people I most care about.
And was it them who reflected it back to you, or did you suddenly have some sort of aha moment of insight when you thought, Rich, where have you gone?
Yeah, the aha moment was actually having some conflict with my wife, and actually realizing, I wasn't being caring of others. I wasn't being caring of Julie, my wife, and I hadn't realized that she wasn't in a particularly happy place. So it was a moment all of a sudden of my goodness, we've been, I met Julie, I fell in love with her when I was 18, and it's been like that. I'm 53 now, so we're talking, some years, and it was sort of, how can I have missed this? And it really was a sort of like a bit of a lightning bolt that came through as during a conflict, and I sort of had to shake my head and say, what's happening? We're fit, we're healthy, we're lucky enough to have employment where we're working in something that we're deeply passionate about, living in an environment where we're lucky because we've got some outside space. Why am I feeling like this? And it was a real moment for me, actually. So it was a surprise.
And was the curve upwards quick, or did you still have to spend a little time being frustrated and a little bit and
Yeah. I mean, it's the classic thing is when we teach the chain, the classic Kubler-Ross change curve, you hit down to the bottom and then you can get into the bit of a washing machine at the bottom.
Yeah.
You start to look forward and then you get drawn back. So it didn't happen just like that and away you go. The reality was it took 2 or 3 weeks to come gently back out of it. And what really helped me was, number one, was to articulate it and own it myself. Number two was talk about it with other people and get some feedback from my family and my kids, and to own it and say, I apologize. Number three was to actually be more disciplined with how I structured my day. So I would take time out. I would put technology aside. I would turn my mobile phone off. I would put it, it's all the stuff that we know, right? Don't take your mobile phone to your bed, turn it off, leave it downstairs. Do not put your mobile phone on the dining room table. We know all this.
Yeah, we have a rule in our house, no phones in the dining room.
There we go.
No phones in the dining room. In fact, when you're saying that, I think you're so right, that discipline, that sort of, almost getting up at a time, not lounging around in my kind of trackies all day, keeping fit. But something you said there that really resonated with me was when you talk about this, being able to talk about it, especially within the family. We are all locked in. It's going to be like this for a while. And actually, the only people we've got to talk to are those around us. Actually, they're the people who care the most.
Yeah.
And it seems as though, I'm sure there are many people, maybe even who will listen to this at some point, who will maybe struggle with that moment of being able to be honest and open up and be a bit raw. How did you do that? Was it a leap of faith? Did you have to close your eyes and trust that they would catch you?
I guess so, a little bit. But I mean, where what your reflection is back to me is just made me think would be, I'm thinking about the best leaders that I've ever worked with, or the best leaders that I've come across, whatever best means. Mm-hmm. It was the ones that showed at times frailty, ones that showed a little bit of insecurity, or ones that were authentic and saying, actually, things aren't as good as they could be, or they're unhappy. And I think, one of the things that I would really suggest to myself in the future, and also maybe to managers or leaders out there in the world, is it's okay at times to show a little bit of vulnerability or a little bit of nervousness or frustration. It's okay, because it's human. Nobody knows all the answers, right?
No, you're right. You're so right, because I think the most effective leaders I've worked with can talk about their strengths without sounding like a show-off, and can expose their weaknesses and vulnerabilities without somehow becoming the worst leader that's ever been in charge of a team.
Yeah.
They're comfortable with both those sides. It's that balance. Maybe that's the word here. Maybe sometimes when I was listening to you earlier, I was thinking, maybe this is true for all of us. We tilt out of balance sometimes. And it could be our environment. It could be the world at large. I know I had to turn my news apps off at the beginning of this lockdown. For the first couple of weeks, I was consumed by CNN, Sky News, and my BBC News app. I'm literally consuming every day how many deaths, all over the world. I was almost counting up, there's 45,000 today, there's 4,000 there, there's 10,000 more here, constantly consuming news to the point where I realized if I didn't actually remove these apps from my phone, I was going to end up just being sad all the time.
Yeah.
Because actually what I realized, my reflection is what you focus on grows.
Yeah.
And if I was going to be this, I had this very negative soundtrack in my head about COVID-19. And I've got many friends in Italy and they were struggling and suffering. And I was hearing them, singing out the balcony and all of this. And I was thinking, if I stood outside my house and started singing, if anyone went past, they'd tell me what to do with my singing, quite frankly.
I have heard you sing, Brad, and I would agree. I would agree with them. I would agree with them. But I mean, if there is, it's easy to dwell on the lessons that come out of difficulty. So you asked me, so what are the things, or what have you noticed? What are the things? And I immediately went to when I was feeling really bad, right?
Yeah, right.
But actually, day 58, what else have I known? Actually, there's been some amazing positive unintended consequences. Yeah. And I think, I try and find something that this is giving me an opportunity to find something that's new and enlightening and makes me feel better. Now, whether that is actually, I was speaking to an old boss yesterday who's 62, and he said, I have never, ever had the opportunity of watching my garden change during this time of year, because I'm always flying, I'm always traveling, I'm always in the office, I'm never here. And it's amazing, seeing the plants coming up, and we planted them in this order, and now I understand the reason why.
Right.
Before, I used to walk past them. I wonder what else, what else that we walk past every day because we're not being present. Now, is that a conversation that a colleague says, an off-the-cuff remark, or is it sort of something that's written in an email, or is it a conversation that one of our children says to us over dinner time, or something like that, or something that our partners say to us? I wonder what because we're wrapped up in our own world, wonder what we're missing. And I think there's a lot of little golden gems, nuggets that if I'm more present and I notice and I'm more curious and I'm more thoughtful, I wonder what amazing things we could discover. And I'm trying to find these little gems, little nugget every single day. I don't know about your thoughts on that, Brad.
Oh, well, do you know, when I'm listening to you, it instantly makes me think, one, I empathise with the garden piece, because that is lovely. Although my job is always to water the plants in my house, so I always get to enjoy early morning or late evening, enjoying looking at where they are in their state of flux and growth. But this idea of attention, of giving attention to things that normally, when the alarm goes off at 5:30 and then in the car, off to work all day, come back, check your emails, make dinner. And actually, one of the beautiful adaptations of the last couple of months has actually been having both kids at home, 21 and 19, not at uni, normally not here, and watching movies with them every night. Undivided attention, not on the Xbox, not in their room on Spotify, actually watching movies. And my son and I watched Rocky. First time he's seen it. My favourite movie, I talk of it as a love story, not a boxing movie. And he got it. Yeah. And actually having the intention to do things, I've loved that about the last few months. So creating intention around doing things with people I care about and don't get the time with because we're so busy.
Yeah, totally.
I'm not busy, right?
Oh, I've got a story I've got to tell you. So I'm very lucky because my parents live next door. So my parents are both in their 80s, and father is quite a traditional Englishman. We show our hug by a stiff handshake. We show our love through a stiff handshake. So I've got a 53, and I've about a year or 2 years ago, I realized, when was the last time we actually hugged? spontaneously. And I couldn't think of it. And I thought, oh my God, I wrote because he hugs my son, which is lovely. I hug my son, but we don't hug one another. And why is that? And during this period of time, I thought, I really want to hug my dad. And I sort of, how do I go about hugging my dad without him thinking this is weird? And it was just 3 nights ago that we just sort of were walking around together, because we're not social distant, because I'm social isolating anyway, and he is because I'm vulnerable through a different thing, and so we're all in it together. And we just turned to one another and we just hugged each other, and it was just so spontaneous and but thoughtful as well. And we sort of we had this little moment, and it came away, and I thought, oh my God, I've hugged my dad. It was just such a touching, loving moment, and spontaneous, that it was wonderful. That if I hadn't been thoughtful at the time to create these moments to spend time with him, that might never have happened. And
Richard, I wonder how much of what you're saying and sharing, and even some of the things I've reflected on, how much of it is the capacity to create a mindset that is more positively intended. Because, I also know a lot of people, clients, patients, people who I know of that are really struggling deeply during this time. They don't have an outdoor space, and they're living in a 2-bed flat, an apartment in Paris with 3 kids and a partner who's also further from work. Creating that positive mind space almost feels like a gift that not everybody can touch.
Yeah. So the question is, how do you do that? Or can you do that?
Maybe it's, can you?
I think you can. And I think there are a number of steps. The first step is to realize that you are prepared to give it a go and you want to. Because sometimes when I'm feeling down and grouchy or in a darker place, I actually choose not to look for the light. And actually I choose to stay in that dark place. So the first thing for me is to actually try and make a choice. No, I do want a better place. I do want to start thinking positively. I think the next thing is to enlist some help by talking to anybody you can talk to about how you're feeling. The third thing would be to do a couple of things. One is really focus on a practical thing that you are going to practice every day. Now that could be, I am going to make a call to somebody I haven't spoken to for a long time. It could be that I am going to, over the next 2 hours, I'm going to find something that I'm going to research or look up, that I'm going to go to in my curiosity, and really try and find something that's deep and meaningful that I want to share with other people. I think the other piece that goes with it is the sort of the feeding, that's what I'd call the feeding of the mind. The other one is something that you talked about, is keeping physical. Is if you are in a 1-bedroom flat and you are on a 4th floor and you don't have any outside space, there are certain things, exercises or yoga, that you can practice. And doing something physical and mindful is fabulous. I've got a wonderful colleague who's caring for his wife in Tokyo. They live in a 2-bedroom flat, and he hasn't been outside for a long, long time. And he practices meditation. And he just disappears into this amazing place in his mind that gives him so much encouragement, thought, calmness. So I think you can change. I think it's wanting to change. I think it's putting some practice in each and every day, whether that is spotting something that you're interested in, or whether it is some sort of practice around physical activity or mental stimulation, meditation, yoga, that sort of thing.
The theme I take from that, though, of course, is that it is totally down to me to control that.
Yeah.
And that, of course, is the challenge. I'm reminded of my mum when I was younger. She always used to say to me, if I had negative thoughts or I was being a bit beating myself up about stuff, she used to say to me, you know, Bradley, of course she calls me Bradley, right?
Of course.
Of course. No one else is allowed to, by the way, just in case you were ever compelled to call me Bradley, I won't respond. You know, Bradley, she said, you're the DJ of the soundtrack in your head.
Yeah, cool.
If you don't like it, change the record.
Yeah.
And it really didn't make any sense to me when I was 6 years old.
Yeah.
But as I grew up and sort of went through my teens, when of course everything is so intense, I did realize what she was saying. And as an adult, actually, it's really helped. So when I've had moments when I've either been concerned about the business during this time, you know, how we're all going to pivot or change, what's going to happen when clients no longer want face-to-face classroom trainings.
Yeah.
How do we change how the business looks? Those negative soundtracks that can grab hold.
Yes.
Actually, just reminding myself, I'm the DJ.
Yeah.
I don't like that soundtrack. So pick another record, right? Find a tune, stick it on.
Yeah.
And listen to that every day, because once you play it early in the morning, you know, what you focus on will grow. And I've got that tune in my head all day, and I like that tune.
Yeah.
And that for me is how I found my way out of the darker moments, is by changing the record. And I just play a different theme tune up there.
Oh, that's fantastic. And it's sort of going a full circle in our conversation, because you started off. What have you been thinking about over the last, you know, what sort of things have you learned over the last 58 days? And I talked to you about going into a bit of a darker space, and that was my record, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And it actually, I didn't realize that it was a record that I was really listening to for 2 weeks, until I had a moment. And it was at that choice I made my wife and my family helped me to have the choice of changing the record or not. And I chose to change it, and it's got better, which is great. It's great.
I think that's just the perfect pause moment in our conversation.
Bradley?
Sorry, I didn't hear that.
Bradley, it's been a marvellous pleasure. Our first record of a series, maybe.
I love it. I'll look forward to the next one.
Fantastic.
Okay, let's turn that off then. That was good fun.